By 2025, over the course of its 13 years and 152 episodes, My 600-Pound Life had documented some of the rawest, unfiltered human stories ever put on television. It was no longer just a weight loss journey. It was about the human condition when faced with addiction, trauma, family dysfunction, and the pursuit of a life worth living while trapped in a body holding you back from a normal life altogether. But something was shifting behind the scenes. Seasons 12 and 13 were noticeably shorter than what came before, at just 7 episodes each. And then, in early 2025, Dr. Now announced he was taking his no-nonsense attitude and hilarious one-liners over to Lifetime to launch a brand new show, The 6,000-Pound Diaries. This is part 4 of the Living Large Where Are They Now marathon for My 600-Pound Life, Seasons 12 and 13, the final seasons. Season 12, Krystal Store. Krystal had been fighting her weight since kindergarten when she already tipped the scales at over 100 pounds. Since then, a childhood accident, an early pregnancy, and a string of bad relationships all played a role in her weight spiraling out of control. By the time she reached out to Dr. Now in 2022, the 36-year-old from Idaho weighed 690 pounds and needed her parents to care for her like a child. She came in with a fiancé, Damien, and a goal to lose enough weight to walk down the aisle. And she did both. In less than 12 months, she married Damien, earned her surgery, and dropped to 505 pounds. But things took a different turn the following year. After returning to Idaho Falls, the marriage to Damien fell apart. Then Joey Ormsby came along. He's based in Utah, and the two got into a relationship sometime in 2023. Krystal keeps a low profile online, but based on a photo Joey shared in 2024, her face looks slimmer than it did during her time on the show. Whether that reflects real progress in her weight loss journey, though, I can't be certain. William Keefer. William's weight problems started in middle school, back when a sports injury ended any athletic ambitions he had. Over the years, the weight kept climbing, depression set in, and by the time his episode aired in 2024, the man from Ohio weighed 620 pounds. He was almost completely dependent on his mother Dorothy for basic daily care. His personal life hadn't been much kinder. A 5-year marriage ended in divorce, job losses piled up, and William found himself stuck, both financially and physically. When he finally sat across from Dr. Now, what should have been a major motivator to change his life turned out to be just another nothing burger. He failed to hit the required weight loss targets and eventually admitted on camera that he hadn't been following the diet at all.
You're in path to kill yourself with the food?
Without meeting the weight loss targets, surgery was off the table for William. Since the show, William has stayed off social media entirely, leaving no updates on whether he ever got back on track. The last thing he told the cameras was that he had quit soda and was hoping to move forward. Whether he did is anyone's guess. Delana Boyer. Delana was raised by her first cousin Marianne after her biological mother gave her up as a young child. As she got older, life didn't get any easier. At just 20, she lost a baby during childbirth. Years later, her divorce cost her custody of her son Lee. Then her 12-year-old daughter Savannah walked out after a fight and never came back. Food became her comfort. And by the time she was 46, she weighed 646 pounds. When she first started her journey with Dr. Now in 2022, it wasn't smooth. She missed her first appointment because her car broke down. When she finally arrived, Dr. Now set a clear target to lose 50 pounds in 2 months. But she actually gained weight when she returned for her follow-up appointment. Dr. Now laid it out plainly: lose 55 pounds in 2 months or she was off the program. That was the wake-up call Delana needed. She and her husband James packed up and moved to Houston to commit fully to Dr. Now's program. By her next appointment, she'd lost more than 70 pounds, surpassing Dr. Now's target, and underwent weight loss surgery smoothly. By 2024, her marriage to James had fallen apart, though she hasn't spoken publicly about what happened. In July the same year, she announced she had returned to work part-time, her first job since 2018. By October 2025, Delana had remarried. She and Ronnie Hancock tied the knot, and based on her social media, the two seemed genuinely happy together. Her current photos show a noticeable difference in her appearance, suggesting she has stayed on track with her weight loss. And the relationship with her daughter Savannah, now going by Nikki Holland, has fully turned around. After years apart, the two are rebuilding their relationship. Most importantly, Delana has finally gotten to spend time with her granddaughter. Shakyia Jackson. When Shakyia was young, she bounced between her father's home and foster care before eventually reuniting with her mother. By the time she finished high school, she weighed over 400 pounds. A traumatic experience at her gas station job in 2018 made things significantly worse, and her weight kept climbing. When she came to Dr. Now in 2022, she weighed 655 pounds. He put her on a strict plan and sent her home. Then she went silent for 6 months. When she finally resurfaced, she explained she had collapsed at home, suffered respiratory failure, and woken up in a hospital 3 weeks later from a coma. Her mother refused to take her back, and Shakyia ended up in an extended stay hotel on her own. She got back in contact with Dr. Now, but by month 11, she had only lost around 9 pounds. Dr. Now removed her from the program, telling her to go to therapy first before he would consider working with her again. Shakyia was not the only one Dr. Now showed the door. I did a full video on patients Dr. Now refused to help, and let's just say the list is longer than you'd think. Check the link on your screen. Since then, Shakyia has slowly put her life back together. In January 2025, she posted about undergoing a procedure, strongly suggesting she finally got the gastric bypass Dr. Now had withheld. She hasn't confirmed it publicly, but the hint was hard to miss. She rarely posts photos of herself, but she has been sharing occasional weight loss updates. By August 2025, she was down 41 pounds, and by November, she had lost another 10. Shakyia runs her own small business, selling custom tumblers and beaded pens. Her relationship with her mother, which had been strained after she was turned away during her illness, has also improved. In August 2025, she posted about being grateful for her mother standing by her through difficult times. Ruiz. For a majority of his life, Abi was skinny until he started gaining weight in his late teens when he stopped playing sports. He then gradually developed an unhealthy eating habit. But in 2014, things worsened when he was involved in an accident. Abi Ruiz was on his way to propose to his girlfriend Brenda when another driver ran a stop sign and hit him. The accident left him with a swollen spine and no feeling in his legs. He spent the next several years completely bedridden, and the weight kept climbing. Brenda stayed by his side and even married him. By the time Dr. Now got involved in 2022, Abi had no idea how heavy he was. Dr. Now arranged for him to be transferred to a medical facility, where he was finally weighed at 728 pounds. After 6 months of a strict diet and physiotherapy routine, he dropped to 527 pounds. Dr. Now cleared him for weight loss surgery, which reduced his stomach by 80%. By early 2023, Abi was down to 403 pounds. But his next goal required even more. An orthopedic surgeon found the bones in his legs had fused and would need surgery, but only after he got below 350 pounds. Abi has been steadily working toward that ever since. He started a workout routine involving weightlifting, boxing, and physiotherapy. By September 2024, he shared an update confirming that he had lost hundreds of pounds since his surgery. He still has goals ahead of excess skin removal, surgery to fix his feet and hips, none of which have happened yet. But while he waits, his world has slowly opened back up. He's been out and about in Austin, Texas, going out on dates with Brenda, and doing things that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Based on his recent photos, he looks like a completely different person. Perrine. Rose was 58 years old and living in Jonesboro, Arkansas. She relied on an oxygen tank at night, used a motorized wheelchair to get around, and had a heart condition that was getting worse. Her daughter-in-law, Samantha, helped with basic daily tasks like bathing and cooking. Meanwhile, Rose hadn't weighed herself in nearly 2 decades. When she finally stepped onto Dr. Now's scale in 2022, she weighed 564 pounds. But Rose was motivated from the start. 3 months into the program, she was making solid progress. But anxiety about the upcoming surgery started creeping in, and she slipped back into old habits. She was upfront with Dr. Now about it, moved to Houston to remove the temptations, and got herself back on track. She was eventually cleared for surgery, and by month 10, she was down to around 390 pounds. Since the show, Rose has stayed off social media almost entirely. It appears she remains engaged to Russell and still lives in Arkansas. The only recent photo I could find was posted on Russell's Facebook in October 2024, and it was taken from a distance. Honestly, it's hard to tell whether she's kept the weight off or not. Bridgeman. Charles had a rough start. He grew up with a mother addicted to meth and spent most of his childhood at his grandparents' house. By high school, he was using drugs himself. Both his mother and grandmother eventually kicked him out, and he spent a couple of years homeless before getting arrested for drug possession. Rehab got him clean, but the addiction didn't disappear. It just shifted to food. By 2022, Charles was in his early 30s living in Everett, Washington, and weighed over 700 pounds. His brother Brad had become his full-time caregiver. So, in an attempt to change his life, Charles reached out to Dr. Now for help. But his relationship with Dr. Now was rocky from the start. He missed appointments, argued with Dr. Now, and at one point, Charles hung up on him mid-call. Despite all of that, he did lose weight. After reaching around 600 pounds, Dr. Now approved him for surgery. But Charles turned it down. He didn't want to leave his family, even temporarily, and believed he could keep losing weight on his own in Washington. That decision raised eyebrows. But Charles backed it up. By March 2026, he posted on Facebook that he was down to 380 pounds. He hasn't mentioned whether he got there through diet alone or eventually got the surgery. But what's clear is that Charles didn't give up on losing weight, and it shows in his photos. He's still in Everett, now driving for Lyft, and living a life that would have been completely out of reach just a few years ago. Before we move on to Season 13, if this video has you stress eating or stress fasting, either way, like it and give it a hype. I put in the work so you don't have to go digging through Facebook profiles at 2 a.m. Also, hit that subscribe button and join the Living Large family. I promise, we're fun. Okay, here we go. Season 13, Jonathan Colp. Jonathan grew up in a financially unstable home where food was sometimes scarce. So when his mother could afford it, she overfed him to make up for it. And Jonathan developed a habit of overeating that stuck. Bullying in school made it worse. Then when both of his parents died, practically one right after the other, he spiraled. By the time he reached out to Dr. Now in 2023, he weighed 641 pounds and was completely housebound, relying on his wife Tsina for nearly everything. But since the start of his journey, Jonathan was determined. He hit Dr. Now's target weight loss goal and was approved for surgery by the 3rd month. Surgery was scheduled 2 months later, and though he came in 3 pounds short of his pre-surgery goal, Dr. Now moved forward with the procedure. After 1 year, Jonathan weighed 425 pounds. But he didn't stop there. In February 2024, he finally returned to work as an EMT at Franklin Hospital, the career he'd been forced to leave behind. He and Tsina are still together, and still working out side by side. In January 2025, he posted a photo of himself wearing his old pants to show how far he'd come. Despite staying on track with his weight loss, Jonathan still struggles with lymphedema in his legs. In late 2025, an infection landed him in the hospital for 3 days. But he appears to be back on his feet and still working toward getting the masses removed. Karen Suffren. Karen battled severe anxiety for years, and over time it developed into agoraphobia, a condition that made it nearly impossible for her to leave the house. She relied heavily on her twin children, Amber and Ryan, for daily support. By the time she connected with Dr. Now in 2023, her weight had become a serious health concern. But getting to his Houston clinic wasn't an option. So Dr. Now worked around it. He arranged for a nurse practitioner to visit her home for weigh-ins and set her up with virtual therapy sessions with Dr. Paradise. Karen insisted she was making progress, at one point claiming she had lost 100 pounds. But the scale told a different story. After months in the program, she had only lost around 30 pounds. When Dr. Now pointed out the gap, Karen pushed back, saying his scales were inaccurate. Eventually, she decided she'd learned enough from the program to continue on her own and walked away. Since the show, Karen hasn't shared any updates on her weight loss. Her last public post was a selfie in February 2024. Judging from the photo, there isn't much visible change from her time on the show. Dr. Now said his door remains open whenever she's ready. Whether she'll ever pursue weight loss again is anyone's guess. Gary Hawkins. Gary was the youngest of 8 kids growing up in Oakland, California, where his mother always spoiled him with sweets and fast food. By age 10, he weighed 200 pounds. As a teenager, he struggled with self-esteem and food addiction, which led him to drop out of high school. For a while, he found hope in pursuing music, but any chance of success faded when he was introduced to substance abuse. He finally traded his drug addiction for food addiction once more, and eventually lost the ability to walk entirely. By the time he reached out to Dr. Now in 2023, he hadn't gotten out of bed in 9 months. He was transferred to a local clinic to be weighed, and came in at 764 pounds. Dr. Now set target after target, but Gary kept falling short. With missed goals, minimal progress, and months of back and forth, Dr. Now eventually removed him from the program. He told Gary that if he could ever walk into the Houston clinic on his own, he'd be welcome back. By the end of filming, Gary could only manage 12 steps at a time. Since the show, however, Gary has clearly turned things around. In April 2026, he shared that he now weighs around 400 pounds.
I am literally down to almost I'm at 402 right now.
And regularly posts workout routines, healthy meal preps, and physiotherapy sessions on social media. He went from being bedridden 3 years ago to doing 100 stands in a single workout session. He still hasn't had surgery, but has launched a GoFundMe to help fund his journey and surgical preparations. I think Dr. Now would be pretty proud, don't you? Krystal Armintor. Krystal Armintor grew up without her parents in the picture, finding comfort in food during meals with her grandmother. But her childhood was far darker than that. She was assaulted at 14, ended up in an abusive relationship, and her daughter Corrigan eventually left home. By the time she sat across from Dr. Now in 2023, the 36-year-old weighed 592 pounds and described her daily life as excruciating. She came into the program with her husband Mark by her side, fully committed. After 5 months in the program, she was down to 512 pounds, and Dr. Now cleared her for surgery, removing 85% of her stomach. She also worked with a therapist, eventually reconnecting with her daughter in an emotional conversation toward the end of filming. Since then, Krystal has had a dramatic transformation. Recent photos of her on Facebook show someone almost completely unrecognizable. Honestly, I actually had to cross-reference her old posts just to be sure I had the right person. Her marriage to Mark ended, though she said it was a sad but amicable split, and they remain friends. She has confirmed she is now in a relationship with a man named Ryan, and says she was around 370 pounds when they met and has continued losing weight since. She doesn't post much about her weight loss journey specifically, but the photos say enough. And if you thought Krystal's before and after photos were hard to believe, I put together a whole video of the most dramatic transformations in my 600-pound life history. Some of them will genuinely make your jaw drop. Scroll down for the link below. Jacky Rodgers. Food was Jacky's coping mechanism for as long as she could remember. She lost her mother to alcoholism at 16 and her father at 25. By the time she reached out to Dr. Now in 2023, she was over 700 pounds. Progress was slow at the start. She consistently fell short of Dr. Now's targets, and at one point actually gained weight after the anniversary of her father's death triggered a setback. Dr. Now gave her one final ultimatum: lose the weight or get dropped from the program. She took it seriously, started therapy with Dr. Paradise, and came back having lost enough to be cleared for surgery. By the end of the year, she had lost over 150 pounds. Since then, Jacky has not looked back. By November 2024, she had lost 361 pounds. In January 2025, doctors removed 37 pounds of excess skin, bringing her weight to 328 pounds. By March, she went from walking a mile in over an hour to completing it in 24 minutes without stopping. As of June 2026, she's lost a total of 408 pounds and is still going. She regularly shares updates, meal preps, and transformation photos with her growing online community. DeShaun Davis. DeShaun had a rough start to life. His mother struggled with substance abuse, his father was in jail, and his stepfather was verbally abusive at home. Then as a teenager, he was shot while trying to protect his mother during a family outing. The bullet only grazed his hand, but the incident left a scar that cut much deeper. He stopped going outside, stopped trusting people, and over the years, the weight climbed. By the time his episode aired in 2025, the 28-year-old from Omaha weighed over 700 pounds, barely left his bedroom. His younger sister, Diamond, helped him get dressed and prepared his meals. He was entirely dependent on his family and government assistance. His time in the program was a struggle from day one. He refused to follow the diet, refused the physical therapist, and by month 7 refused to be transported to a clinic for a weigh-in. After 10 months in the program, he had blocked Dr. Now's number and fired his nurse. Since then, DeShaun has remained active on social media, but there's no indication that anything has changed. His Facebook mostly consists of memes, with no weight loss updates or recent photos. Juan Adams. Juan grew up watching his father mistreat his mother, and food became his coping mechanism. After his parents divorced, his overeating habit only got worse. By middle school, he already weighed 230 pounds. As an adult, his weight spiraled, and eventually forced him to step away from his work as a pastor. By the time he started filming, the 47-year-old from Louisiana weighed 627 pounds. He was living with his sister and her children, rarely left the house, and relied on his mother and brother Derek to drive him to the grocery store. Progress in the program was slow. He insisted he'd been following the diet, but his numbers told a different story. Dr. Now sent him to therapy with Dr. Paradise, and that's where something finally shifted. After a few months, he lost a total of 122 pounds, and Dr. Now cleared him for surgery. His episode ended before the procedure took place, so whether he actually went through with it remains unknown. The last photo he posted of himself was in early 2023, likely before filming even began. Mostly, he posts updates about his church, Outlet Ministries, back in Louisiana. Do you know anything I don't? If you have any updates on Juan, please post in the comments. If you stayed with me through seasons 12 and 13, you just witnessed the part of the story that TLC never got to tell, or maybe chose not to. Some of these patients are unrecognizable today, living lives they couldn't have imagined when they first stepped on Dr. Now's scale. Others went quiet, never to be heard from again. And some are apparently out here doing 100 stands in a single session and walking a mile in under 30 minutes. And they're all still fighting their own battles day after day, just without the cameras. If you missed my other Where Are They Now marathons covering seasons 1 through 11, you should watch those next. Drop a comment telling me whose update surprised you the most. And go live your life. A healthy one, please. We're invested in you now.